Hello, welcome along to another episode of Soundtrack and Extra on our little YouTube show. This is an opportunity for me to share some of our guests that we have had or have coming up on the podcast, as well as some guests who are unique to this channel as well. Today we are kind of catching up, to be honest. It's been a busy summer, so we've not been around for the last couple of weeks, but I've got loads of stuff coming up for you over the next little while. People like Simon from Biffy Clyro, Ewan McGregor, and we also have Craig Roberts talking about his new film Eternal Beauty. That's all to come in weeks to come. But on this show, we have got Tim Roth, we've got Ludwig Göransson, and we have Harry Gregson Williams. So, two composers and an actor-director. Loads of stuff to talk about. We're going to start off with Harry, who was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. So if you want to hear our entire chat with loads of music kind of weaved into it, then head to your usual podcast provider and listen to that episode with Harry. Specifically within this, a little clip that you're about to see. And what I love doing about this little YouTube version is you get to see people. So you get to see how we do the interviews. And in the way things are at the minute, most of them are by Zoom. So for me, it's really nice because I can still see the people that I'm talking to and, you know, try and kind of strike up as much of a natural conversation as is possible. Harry was a treat. Such a great, enthusiastic storyteller. So much to talk about as well, be it his work with the Scott brothers, Tony and Ridley, which we touch on, or be it Mulan, which is his most recent project, the live action remake, of course, of the animated Disney classic, which you can check out right now on Disney Plus. I think it's an extraordinary accomplishment, this film. It's absolutely beautiful. It's poetic, it's cinematic, it's massive. And Harry's done a great job with the film. But we start off talking about those kind of historic relationships that he has, working time and time again with the same directors. For example, someone like Tony Scott. When you have worked with someone over so many years in films, is there almost a kind of shorthand, so to speak, in terms of, you know, you kind of know what the other one wants kind of before they say it, sort of thing, in a way?
Yeah, I think that is true, can be true. I think familiarity did make Tony feel comfortable. I don't think he wanted to keep starting again with someone.
Yeah.
Although, you know, he'd had some pretty class acts do his films before I came along. So I felt like, you know, filling the boots of someone. I mean, I felt that a few times. I mean, with Ridley, the first movie that Rid asked me to do was Kingdom of Heaven, which was way back in 2007. Well, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
First thing I knew about it, I was in my studio in Venice here in LA, and the music editor who was Ridley was doing post-production in London, in Soho, I think, and the music editor, who was a friend of mine, called me and said, look, Ridley's listening to CDs tonight. He keeps listening to yours. So I said, what do you mean? Isn't Hans doing it? Because the last time they did that dance, they all won Oscars, didn't they, for Gladiator? Why would you change? But I don't know. Maybe it had been handbags at dawn. I don't know what went on there, but he was, you know, Ridley was in the process of changing course.
Yeah.
And so that was a fortunate one. But those things happen.
Good intel.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But I mean, Prometheus was just extraordinary, and The Martian as well. I was listening to the Martian score today, and that theme tune for The Martian is just.
Yeah. I love
that score. I love that film.
Yes, so do I. I mean, I remember when Ridley asked me if I'd do it. He just really, really blunt. He's like, read it, like it, do it. He sent me the script. And he was right. He's like, don't F it up. I'm like, what Ridley? Why is that the starting point? That was before I saw it. And then he put me in a cut, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. This is well acted. It's well written. It's fun. It's dramatic. It's emotional. Yeah, there's so much good about it. So just don't mess it up. I'm like, okay, great, thanks. I'll see what I can do. But yeah, no, it's, you know, I'm felt so fortunate to do a film like that. You know, let's be honest. Sometimes, you know, my studio, I'm, you know, I have the screen above my thing there.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, so it's up there. So I'm looking at the damn thing 24 hours a day, or when I'm composing, and that's what's telling me what I've got to do. That's my inspiration for everything. But you know, sometimes you look at it and think, really, that dialogue line, you couldn't have thought anything better. or really, sometimes. But on The Martian, it just seemed like a perfect little film. Like, I love the plot, I love the way it unfurls, acting's good, everything was good about it. So yeah, you can't come across those too often. Sometimes one is compensating for something, as a composer.
Yeah.
Occasionally. But as concerns Mulan, that was quite the reverse. I was so happy to be asked to do that, because I had, with my two oldest children, that was around about, so they're 19 and 21 now. So that they're, that the first Mulan was perfect for them at that time when they were kids. And I loved it. I loved Jerry Goldson's score. I loved everything about it.
Did you have to remove that almost, though, in a way, from your trying kind of, when there is already attachment? I imagine it's similar with Prometheus, though, in terms of there's an existing soundscape there to that world and to that kind of, it's
very true. And with the great thing about Mulan, again, a little bit like when I did the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 with Tony. This isn't a remake, mate. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, it's not. We're using the same story. I've tweaked it. It's going to be a different score. It's going to be a different axis. It's different. So don't be guided by, you can watch the other film if you like, but it's not, this isn't what we're doing. And Nikki said very much the same thing with Mulan. So it's absolutely, it's being faithful to the story. But, we have a different actor. We're actor. It's live action.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to have anyone that and sing. It's not going to be a musical. But I had to find ways of giving the audience what some of them really would want, which is to be put in mind of some moments from the previous film. And there are a couple of memorable moments that hope we've nailed it. You'll have to see when you see the movie. But in particular, the fans of the first movie seem to love that film that Christina Aguilera sang, the Reflection.
Yeah.
So it's perfect, story point, isn't it? So there's a girl who's having to disguise herself in order to do what she needs to do, but she's looking at herself and why can't I be the person I want to be? And who is it that I'm looking at in my reflection? So we're like, well, okay, in our movie, Mulan is not going to sing that, but what can you do, Harry? What can we do to give us that sort of feeling? So as that moment passes in this film, today's film, you'll hear an echo of that I've arranged, that theme. And then it'll take you into the present Mulan theme, which is quite different. But there's a couple of moments in this movie where I hope the audience will have that feels good. That feels good.
Yeah.
So I hope so, because that's what we aimed at. But we worked really hard on this because, there was one point where I think, there was a desire to well, if we're not having singing, what are we going to have? How are we going to pay homage to, and acknowledge that people do have a love of that first film? And I think we found a solution to that. I hope so.
Impossible. A woman leading a man's army. It is my duty to fight for the kingdom.
The girl who has come to save the dynasty.
You will die pretending to be something you're not.
Yet here I stand. I'm Hua Mulan. I will bring honor to us all.
Disney's Mulan, streaming September 4th. Premier access to Mulan is exclusively available to Disney Plus subscribers for $19.99.
Harry Gregson Williams. You can go and watch Mulan. It's on Disney Plus now. And please go and listen to the full episode of the podcast with Harry, which you can find if you aren't already a subscriber by just heading to your usual podcast provider and searching for Soundtracking with Edith Bowman. Right, Ludwig Göransson, I'm such a fan. I think he's brilliant. I think for me, he's one of the most exciting kind of new composers around. And I've been kind of talking about him on the podcast for a while. With Ryan Coogler, we talked about him on his work on Black Panther and Creed and And then I've been desperate to talk to him, of course, about his work on The Mandalorian, which, I mean, please tell me you've watched it during lockdown if you haven't. Again, not that this is one big advert for Disney Plus, but it's on Disney Plus, and if you like it, then it comes with all these brilliant little additional films that they've called galleries, and I think there's like 6 or 8 of them. There's one for every episode, and they take a deep dive into all the brilliant stuff around The Mandalorian, be it the legacy, the directors, the visual effects, the score. So there's a specific score episode with Ludwig that is fabulous. But of course, most recently, he composed the extraordinary time and mind-bending score for Tenet, Christopher Nolan's new film, which I loved. I've seen it twice at the cinema now, and I'm desperate to see it at least another 2 times. And it was the first film that I saw back in the cinema, first visit back to the cinema, in an IMAX, and just the whole experience. I think it's the type of film that you have to just go and just almost experience it rather than thinking too much about it. Weirdly, there's a line in the film that says, don't try and understand it, just feel it. And weirdly, I think that's how you've got to approach watching the film. But with Ludwig, I was fascinated about, you know, what he's done to create this score for this film. And in terms of preparation for that, you know, working with someone like Christopher Nolan, who historically has worked with Hans Zimmer mostly across his films, you know, stepping into big shoes. But what did that prep involved in terms of, you know, day one, starting on a Christopher Nolan film and doing his research? So that's what I asked him. Did you watch back any of his other films in terms of?
Yeah, back and watch. I think I watched most of them.
Yeah.
And you know, something that really struck me is that, you know, kind of, and also I thought back to like one of the first films I saw with him is in the theater, which was Batman Begins. I was like 20. And I saw it in the theater in Stockholm, and I remember going back home and just like, it was almost like I saw also, it was also felt like I was almost at a live concert. You know,
Yeah.
it's like an opera, you know, the way he uses music, it's like a musical or like an opera, like the way the music is a character in his movies. And yeah, I've always been so interested in just getting a glimpse in his mind and see how he thinks about music.
Were you at that point already writing music for images and things by that point, or you know, were you creating score at that point?
After reading the script,
after, you know, when you were 20 back in Stockholm after watching Batman, were you already in that world?
I was actually studying jazz guitar performance major. That was my major in college. But I had written a piece for orchestra. I was really into film scores. I knew that I wanted to do that. I didn't know how I was going to go about it. But I think definitely seeing that movie in the theater was just like, that was just like another vehicle in my mind to just like push myself into trying to get into that world somehow.
What an amazing story to then be creating an amazing score for him. It's like, isn't life brilliant sometimes?
It's weird, right? It's funny how it lines up.
Yeah. Can I run through a couple of, I'm really apologize now for my really bad kind of descriptions of stuff in terms of bits of score, but it'd just be lovely to kind of talk about, because, you know, I think that it's really, and I guess that's the way that he works. I was lucky enough to speak to him around Interstellar time about the score for that, and working with Hans and the organ and how important that was to almost be the kind of heartbeat of everything around that film, really. And with this, I just think that the music is part of the narrative, really. It's part of the emotion, it's part of the action, it's part of everything. And that's kind of, even that opening, there's the kind of opening sequence, and there's the kind of rhythm and the drums, and it's kind of like you're kind of out the door, you know, you're off out the marks, that kind of thing. And it's such a brilliant way to start, and you're kind of like, right, I'm ready. You know, it's but the rhythm, I think, is such an important thing, because the film has a rhythm. The film has a kind of almost like a dance to it, I think, in a way as well.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you know, I mean, John Day Washington is like, he's an athlete, and just like the way he moves and the way he does, you know, he does all the fights, and like, just, I also went to set, and so I witnessed it in person. So just like being there and seeing him working and how into it he is, and talking to him about his character is just, I think, and also obviously Chris, like the story is very much centered around time, like a lot of his movies are, like most of his movies are, and so I know that just off the bat, rhythmically, rhythm is very important to him, and I'm also extremely interested in rhythm. I think today for me, like that's one of the things, the key elements for me that can make something that makes music. If I can find a rhythm or a new pattern, rhythmic pattern, that's a little bit out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
That's something that makes me inspired into writing music, and that's how I can kind of come up with new ideas from starting with a rhythm that's a little bit different. And I like to work with different time signatures and complex rhythms.
All I have for you is a word. Tenet. It'll open the right doors, some of the wrong ones too. Use it carefully.
To do what I do, I need some idea of the threat we face.
As I understand it, we're trying to prevent World War III.
I'm not saying Armageddon here.
No. Something worse.
I gather you have an interest in a certain Russian national.
Why'd you bring me in? You really want to know? He can communicate with the future. Time travel? No. Inversion?
Aim it and pull the trigger. You're not shooting the bullet, you're catching it.
Whoa. Well, I've seen too much. Well, we'll try and keep up.
Your duty transcends national interests. This is about survival.
Seems bold.
Bold, I'm fine with. I thought you were going to say nuts.
This is where our worlds collide.
How would you like to die?
Old.
You chose the wrong profession.
Well, that from here. Hasn't happened yet.
There are people in the future who need us. I need Tenet.
We need to save them here and now. This reversing the flow of time. Doesn't us being here now mean it never happened? You want to crash a plane, but not from the air. No, it's so dramatic. Well, how big a plane? That part is a little dramatic.
And then he's done it, I think it's a first for him as well with regards to the Travis Scott track as well. And did you have anything to do with that?
Yeah, so one of the last things we did for the movie was, writing an end credit. So I was writing an end credit for the movie, and every time I saw it, I felt like, every time I saw the movie from beginning to finish, I was so floored. This experience I never had, like I had never experienced this before, and the feeling in this whole movie. And when I felt the end credits come on, I just felt like I had an idea of like, we should have a new voice here, because if we already hear stuff you've already heard in the score, it gets a little anticlimactic, and it makes you start thinking about trying to analyze things. And I just wanted to have a new element that just continued taking you on the journey.
Yeah.
And someone and a voice, and we need a new voice there, and I think Travis Scott's voice it's so interesting the way he uses his voice in production wise, and it also, I think his voice is also an element that kind of really worked in the sound palette that me and Chris created for the score. So I was like, I brought that idea up to Chris. I was like, what if we have this idea of putting Travis Scott in the end credits, and Chris was super into it, and we had a rearranged for a screening for Travis. I think Travis was probably one of the first people in the world to see the movie, and so he saw it, and like he had a great reaction to it, and like what he took away from the movie in the conversations afterward was exactly what Chris wanted to hear. So it was just kind of was a given, and Travis took off to start working on the song, and I sent him the score from I made a beat out of the it was kind of already there, the from the fire truck scene.
Yeah, I love that. I'd written that one down as well. Yeah, that was another one of my ones. Yeah,
and I thought that would be perfect for him, so I sent him that beat, and he made a song around it, and he sent it back, and I worked on it a little bit together, and then put it in the end titles, and it was perfect. It was actually so good. So Chris and I took a little snippet of his vocal and put it into a couple of key moments of the score, with the protagonist theme. So when you hear the protagonist theme through the movie, it's accompanied by a little snippet of Travis Scott's vocals.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you mind if we talk about a couple of other things as well? In lockdown, we have obsessed over The Mandalorian. Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. Were you a Star Wars fan? Were you a fan of that world? And kind of, if you were going into that, did you have to put that to one side, or did you fully embrace it?
I was definitely, I think I was more a fan of I've obviously loved Star Wars, but I was originally just a fan of the music. I remember that was the one, it was the music that brought me into the movie, if you look that way. And it's I would say the best piece of music ever created for film. And so obviously going into that world was a lot of pressure. But as soon as I knew that John and Dave Filoni wanted to take it somewhere else and do something different, it was extremely liberating and exciting, but also challenging. And I think something that I used instead of something that I used as an inspiration was, like, I was trying to get into the mindset that John Williams was at the time when he was writing it. So I went back, and instead of just listening to Star Wars, I went back and listened to his earlier work that where his mindset was right before he created the Star Wars trilogy.
I remember being at school and playing the tenor recorder as well. And you have definitely made the recorder a new sexy instrument from the way that you talk about it in that little galleries thing as well. It's like kids around the world who are being forced to play the recorder at school are like, yes, now it's an instrument that, it's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, no, maybe that's something they'll play now and then, instead of, what's the first piece you play?
London's Burning was the first thing that I learned, on the recorder.
Maybe we'll get the Mandalorian theme now.
Yeah, I think it's only fair, surely. But I'm excited also for the second season of that, as well as we all are, which I hope we're getting at some point this year. At some point, have you finished it?
October. I'm like right in the middle.
Tweaking.
Yeah.
Show me the one whose safety deemed such destruction. You must reunite it with its own kind.
Where?
This you must determine. The songs of eons past tell of battles between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi.
You expect me to search the galaxy and deliver this creature to a race of enemy sorcerers?
This is the way.
You know this is no place for a child.
Wherever I go, he goes.
So I've heard.
This is the way.
Thank you so much for your time. It's genuinely a real treat to get to chat to you. I'm such a fan, and I hope we get to do it again some point. And yeah. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Ludwig. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Ludwig, he's brilliant, isn't he? I really hope someday I get to go and hang out in his kind of musical man cave. Mandalorian season 2 is coming to the UK on Disney Plus 30th of October. So, oh my God, I can't wait for that. I'm definitely going to rewatch the first season in preparation for that. If you want to hear more of Ludwig, because we had a really nice long chat, and Ben, who works with me in the podcast, has done an extraordinary job of weaving in so much of the music that he talks about, both from Tenet, but all the other things that we talk about as well. And I don't know if, like me, we did that interview actually before a couple of things had happened. Before, of course, the very sad passing of Chadwick Boseman, which was beyond sad, really. I don't know if, like me, you went straight away to watch Black Panther again. Me and my kids watched it the night that we found out that he'd sadly passed. So I spoke to Ludwig before Chadwick had passed away, you know, so yeah, that was a really sad thing. And then also I spoke to Ludwig before we found out about the release date of The Mandalorian, so that's why I'm a little bit vague about it in the interview. But please do go and listen to the podcast episode of Ludwig, because he is great company, really entertaining, and yeah, I hope I get to speak to him many more times. And finally, last but by no means least, Mr. Tim Roth. I mean, he really doesn't need any kind of introduction. Again, there's a full-length episode of the podcast where we talk about all sorts. Ennio Morricone, Tin Star, which is a great series that he's in on Sky. The 3rd season is coming at the end of the year as well. But one of the things I wanted to talk to him about was, of course, his long-standing relationship with Quentin Tarantino, and if their relationship involved music in any way, shape or form. Because you think about the characters that Tim's played for Quentin over the years, a lot of them have, you know, little connections to music, be it, you know, within Reservoir Dogs or that whole the use of music in Pulp Fiction. But anyway, this was a little bit of my chat with Tim, where we talk about the one and only Quentin Tarantino. I mean, talking about film and music, I think Quentin is someone who redefined the use of music within film, you know, back with Reservoir Dogs, in terms of, he really kind of set a new standard, I think, in terms of how creative you can be with music, and in the way that it's inbred within the narrative, but it becomes part and parcel, the whole story, the color, the emotion, all that kind of thing as well. When you were doing Reservoir Dogs, were you aware of the kind of musical element to it, in terms of how inbred the music was going to be with that kind of final look of the film and final feel of the film?
Only in a couple of aspects, because I was involved in a scene where it was a character within the scene, which was when Mike's torturing the cop, and music is involved because of the dance and so on. And I remember, actually, I think that Mike wasn't too keen on doing the dance, you know, and it's like,
well, you can't tell.
One of those, you couldn't tell. Exactly, good acting. But I remember that being an element. And then you did get the feeling that a score would be a character within the film, and in a real sense.
Yeah.
You know, not just a layer.
Yeah.
And that it would be I mean, Quentin thinks very carefully and analyzes very microscopically, if you like, his work when he's on set, before, during, and after the process. So you did get the feeling that music was present, even though it, you know, when we were walking down, there had to be some walking, you know, at the beginning.
Yeah. Did he have music
down.
playing when you were doing that?
No.
No.
But he was, you know, that he was thinking. You know that there was something going on, and that, you know, he was shooting that. I don't know what he would have shot at 40 frames a second or whatever. So there's something was going through his mind.
He's got it playing in his head, hasn't he?
It's got it playing in his head, and also, you know, we're discussing music. You know, we're discussing Madonna's music in the cafe before we all get up and do what we do.
Yeah. And then
so it was always there.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and then Pulp Fiction as well, because he took it even a kind of stage further in the way that, you know, that the music was even more part of the narrative, I think, as well. And I love as well how it kind of had a life of its own after the film as well, and particularly with you and Amanda Plummer's kind of characters in that whole particular track with the use of the, you know, the use of the clip. I'm gonna kill every motherfucking one of you, know, that whole sort of thing. It's like,
I've got a platinum disc.
Have you? Well done.
Yeah, when you just just before they stopped giving them, and it's in my office, and it's the picture with Uma on the you know, the poster, and then it's the actual disc itself, and it's and because anyone who was in the soundtrack got one, so we all got one.
Amazing.
It's great fun.
Yeah.
And you were I mean, he's consistently involved. Music is a character that I think the audience with Quentin is looking forward to seeing or hearing. He's known for it now, but he was, you know, that it's on that it's developed, but it's gone unchanged. It's always present in this film.
I was watching a lovely interview with you actually, and it was really interesting to hear you say that, you know, he hasn't changed in the way that he directs, really, from, you know, he's still this amazing kind of geek and film fan that's a director in the way that he works. You know, he knows exactly what he wants and what he needs to get from his, you know, he's written I think you said something like he's written the improvisations almost.
Well, that's true. You do feel that. And I felt it with the screenplay in Reservoir Dogs. And although me and him talked beforehand, as we got to know each other before we started filming. But it's literally one of those. It's very rare. It's one of those writers who you get the script and all of that stuff's done for you. Mm. It's very rare that you're on set and you do something and you go, and it does happen though, where he goes, "Oh, do that. I want you to do that, whatever that is. Make that noise. Fantastic." And you go, "Oh, okay." But it's all kind of he's written the rhythm and the absurdity and the weakness and the strength. It's all taken care of, and quite often you'd hear him from the back of the set during a take going, "Say the lines," you know. Say the lines. Yeah, you got a point. You know.
How
we
much?
All got told that.
Yeah. How much of though? Because I remember when I watched Hateful Eight in the cinema, and when you came on screen for the first time, it was like, oh yes, and because Oswaldo was such a he's such a big character, you know, in terms of his kind of theatrics and his presence and the voice and all that kind of thing. How much of that was created by Quentin, and how much did you work on that together in terms of that specific character? He
writes. He likes to fuck with me. He knows. He'll tell
Is that
you.
a good thing?
Yes. He knows how much I have a real issue with the upper classes, and so he will write that kind of dialogue to me and just watch me suffer through. I mean, Oswaldo was two characters, you know, and the idea was to let the one guy slip out and then bring him back and, you know, or whatever. but literally, like I said, and he would say it. He said, "I love watching him suffer," so, you know, and he makes him laugh. Quite often with him, and I don't know actually, because the first, we've done different kind of versions of that kind of upper class thing. We did it. It was cut from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but it was the guy that I played was a butler,
Yeah.
an English butler to another character. It's just a scene. It's just that we shot it in a day. It was such fun. But again, that kind of
Yeah.
pompous bullshit, you know. He gets a kick out of
Playing with people. Now, that's a very short clip of Tim, but if you want to go and hear more from him, also Ludwig, and of course Harry, then please do go and listen to all their individual episodes on the podcast Soundtracking with Edith Bowman, which you can find on all your usual podcast providers. Also, it'd be great to know who you'd like to see on the show, because you know, who knows how long this thing's going to go on for. So let me know who you'd like me to get on, and I will reach out and see if I can get them on the show. And if they're not right for the podcast, then they'll still feature on this. But it'd be great if you fancied, you know, kind of letting me know who you guys would like to hear. In the meantime, please subscribe. There's a button somewhere here. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast as well. Massive thanks to Ludwig, to Tim, and to Harry for their time. Next time we are joined by Kat Daly, Ewan McGregor, and Simon from Biffy Clyro, talking about a whole manner of things. In the meantime, take care, stay safe. Over and out.